We've been getting a lot of nonsense today about what's in this memorandum of understanding with Iran. So we got somebody who knows a thing or two about this. Ernie Moniz spent a couple of years negotiating that last deal on the nuclear point. He's an actual nuclear physicist who was then the Energy Secretary of the United States. So I want to hear from him what he makes of this and what comes next in Iran. Somebody who actually knows how to get a proper deal and what that would look like.
That is so great. I've been wanting to hear from him all day. I am so glad you're here. This is why we need both of these shows.
I love it.
It just couldn't be better for me to walk out of here, sit down, and listen to Secretary Moniz talking about this with you.
Well, I hope you enjoy it and have yourself a great evening, Lawrence. Thank you.
Thanks, Elliot. Thank you.
The 11th hour starts now. Tonight, 138 days until the midterm elections, we're watching a president adrift. New emerging details of what he's calling the Trump deal look a lot like he's losing a war and stamping his name on it. Plus, Trump blew up his own Director of National Intelligence nominee's confirmation hearing today as part of a half-baked pressure campaign to get congressional Republicans to back, among other things, a voter suppression bill that he thinks is key to Republicans winning elections and to Trump avoiding a third impeachment. And new analysis by Reuters reveals a shameful new chapter in Trump's brutal ICE crackdown. The former New York City comptroller, Brad Lander, knows a thing or two about resisting ICE, having been handcuffed and hauled into court himself. Lander was exonerated last week, and next week he's planning to become the Democratic nominee for a congressional district in New York. He'll join me tonight to discuss how to melt ICE once and for all. Breaking tonight, President Donald Trump and the Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian have both signed a memorandum of understanding, a ceasefire framework with a 60-day clock to reach a permanent deal. Donald Trump signed it while having dinner with the French President Macron in Versailles. Pezeshkian signed virtually. It all comes only hours after we finally got a first look at this memorandum. Although when I say got a first look, I really mean first listen, since the entire 14-point document was read to reporters by a senior U.S. official. The deal bears no resemblance to the comprehensive 2015 Iran nuclear deal that Donald Trump pulled the U.S. out of in 2018. The key terms are an immediate halt to military operations, including in Lebanon. Although the fighting in Lebanon has exclusively been between Iran-backed Hezbollah forces and the Israelis, and it's not clear if the Israelis or Hezbollah are fully on board with this deal. Also included in the memorandum, Iran recommits to no nuclear weapons and freezes its program where it stands. The U.S. lifts its naval blockade of Iranian ports within 30 days and suspends sanctions on Iranian oil exports immediately. In return, Iran guarantees safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz, but only without fees for ships that traverse the strait for 60 days. And the U.S. commits to create a $300 billion reconstruction package for Iran, along with promising to release frozen Iranian assets. Now, this last point is noteworthy because Trump criticized President Obama repeatedly when $1.7 billion in Iranian assets were unfrozen for the 2015 deal. Today, Trump told reporters that, quote, the unfreezing is an easy one to answer. We've taken a lot of their money, and we have their money. It's not our money, it's their money, and we froze it at a certain point in time. I guess we're going to have to give it back, you know, end quote. Assuming it's not part of your pre-bedtime routine to read memoranda of understanding between warring powers, let me give you some context. Trump launched this war with a constantly moving set of goalposts that included variously unconditional surrender by the Iranians, regime change, the destruction of Iran's military capabilities, and the elimination of its nuclear stockpile. This memorandum achieves none of those things, and arguably leaves the Iranian regime stronger than when the war started. Strategically, at least, Iran's government stands, its military stands, its nuclear program is frozen, not dismantled, and the U.S. is now committed to helping rebuild the country. That last part might sound good, but there are a whole lot of Iranians whom Trump encouraged to raise arms to overthrow their government, saying to them that America has their backs. Iran has a history of treating dissidents poorly. It executes more people per capita than any other nation in the world. To say this deal, which the president is now calling the Trump deal, is less comprehensive than the 2015 nuclear deal is to waste your time and my words. What we have tonight is a structured set of timelines and promises to negotiate with a 60-day window that starts maybe now. Mainly, this seems to be an agreement to eventually, hopefully, come to a bunch of agreements, including on how to actually enforce this memorandum. Trump calls it a great deal, and if you're Iran, you probably agree. Iran and the U.S. once had a real deal, one that Trump called, quote, one of the most incompetent ever made. The U.S., he said, lost on virtually every point. This is what he said about the 2015 deal. That deal actually dealt with Iran's nuclear program and stockpiles. This one does not, at least not yet. Joining me now is the former Energy Secretary, Ernie Moniz. He played a central role in negotiating the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. He's now the founder and CEO of the Energy Futures Initiative Foundation. Secretary Moniz, good to see you again. Thank you for being with us.
Good to see you, Ali.
Let's talk about this. This deal does not address anything to do with nuclear stuff right now. In theory, that's the goal. Tell me, having had a chance to think about this, what could happen next? Could there be some deal that looks a little bit more like what you negotiated leading up to 2015?
Well, first of all, Ali, I think you've said it correctly that, in effect, the Memorandum of Understanding, the MOU signed today, should not be thought of as an Iran deal. It's basically an oil and commodities deal. I think that the impacts on the global economy were turning up the heat, frankly, and the decision was made to go forward with this MOU that, as you say, leaves essentially all the hard problems to be addressed in the next 60 days, which is a very, very short time for that set of problems. I think it's also worth noting, in terms of the path forward, that the three major problems that we had to deal with in 2015, I mean, globally, were nuclear, the nuclear issue, of course, missiles, and I would add to that now drones, and, of course, proxies. President Obama made the strategic choice that we would go sequentially, try to address those one at a time and make real progress. And I think that happened on the nuclear side. Of course, the progress was interrupted, shall we say, in 2018.
Right.
I think that the current administration and our Israeli allies made the decision to, in fact, revisit this and try to resolve all the issues at once. Well, what we see today in the MOU is already a reversion, in effect, to the sequential approach. It says absolutely nothing about missiles, about proxies. It does limit or try to limit Israel's prerogatives in Lebanon, but it says nothing about proxies. And in the agreement itself, it says very clearly that the future negotiations will be confined to the articles in the MOU. Therefore, those issues presumably will not be touched. So we are back to square one with a nuclear negotiation with, frankly, in my view, a much less propitious place to be than we were even back in 2015.
Yeah, I didn't. I mean, I mentioned you were the energy secretary, so you understand very well this whole idea that the Strait of Hormuz became the central issue here as opposed to Iran's nuclear capabilities. But at one point when the defense secretary was asked, you know, this is costing us this much money, and he said, well, how much is it worth to prevent Iran from hitting the U.S. with a nuclear bomb? I just want to be clear. Iran doesn't have a nuclear bomb, nor does it have a missile capable of hitting the United States.
Those are both correct, certainly as far as I know. Yes.
So you spent, one might have liked or not liked the 2015 deal, but I like to remind people it took a long time. People like you and your counterparts in Iran spent a lot of time on a lot of minutia, a lot of detail. We've got 60 days here. I suspect they're going to have to push that deadline back because unless they're going to just cut and paste your deal, which is possible, they could take the things that you discussed because you spent a lot of time working out the finest points of Iran's nuclear program.
Yes, although I would say that the Iranian program, since President Trump in his first term withdrew from the agreement, Iran is in a very different place in terms of the its nuclear assets. And I don't say that to imply that they're in a worse place. In particular, they have, over the last 5-6 years, produced almost half a ton of so-called 60% enriched uranium. The reason I focus on that is to say that there is a misimpression that one needs what's called weapons-grade uranium, 90% enrichment, to make a weapon. That is incorrect. 60% enriched uranium could be used directly in a nuclear bomb. Therefore, with their previous activities, plus that material, frankly, Iran was already in a position where if they decided to make a bomb, they had everything that they needed. So I think in this next 60 days, there are two particularly important, in my view, areas to focus on. One is this 60% uranium has got to be identified, found out where it is, what condition it is, and gotten rid of, probably through blending it back to very low enrichment with the international inspectors monitoring that. So that's one thing which we did not have in 2015 and is a worse situation today, despite the bombing of June 2025 that presumably has a fair amount of that material under some rubble, but we don't even know how much, to be honest. The second issue is, I think, as you know, Ali, we always said in 2015 and since then that the most important nuclear part of the 2015 agreement were the extraordinary verification measures that Iran agreed to. There's none of that, of course, even referred to in the MOU today, and that has to be a very, very high priority for the negotiators. And in particular, I want to emphasize it won't be good enough to have verification measures for the inspectors in looking at sites that Iran declares to be nuclear sites.
They've got to be able to get wherever they want to go.
The possible covert sites.
Yeah.
That's going to be a tough row to hoe after this military operation. But that is key for the negotiators.
Keep your phone on. Hopefully they'll call you for some guidance on this. Secretary, good to see you again.
I doubt
Moniz, I doubt it too. But I appreciate that you're at least talking to us. Ernie Moniz, former Secretary of Energy and a chief negotiator, one of the lead negotiators in the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. Okay, coming up, Donald Trump tested his power this morning by trying to cancel a Senate hearing via Truth Social decree. Spoiler alert. It worked, and the chaos it unleashed only served to distract from his broader goals. So we're going to unpack those next, plus the former New York So Donald Trump sent out one of his trademark Truth Social posts this morning that detonated a day of chaos on Capitol Hill. By noon today, a Senate confirmation hearing had been called off, uncalled off, and then called off again. Trump's social post was as long-winded as a James Joyce novel if it were edited by James Joyce himself. But that's the point, because Trump buries the news in the noise. Let me take a shot at explaining this. Trump had decided to postpone the Senate confirmation hearing for Jay Clayton, who is his own nominee for Director of National Intelligence. Now, the president has no power to schedule, cancel, postpone, prepone, or reschedule confirmation hearings. And for about 10 seconds, it looked like Senate Republicans were going to consult their pocket constitutions and tell them what's what. Tom Cotton, the chair of the Intelligence Committee, initially said the hearing would move forward. Trump had some small power in this. He could order Jay Clayton simply to not attend the hearing, and that's exactly what he did. But the reason why all this happened in the first place is more complicated. So here's the actual story. Don't bother if you can't follow this, because it doesn't make much sense. This is Jay Clayton. Until recently, he was the U.S. attorney at the Southern District of New York, the really important U.S. Southern District. Now he's Trump's nominee to replace Tulsi Gabbard as Director of National Intelligence. Congress has fast-tracked his nomination process largely because of this other guy, whose name is Bill Pulte. He's the guy that Trump appointed as acting DNI, except he has no experience at all in national security. He does, however, have experience as Trump's attack dog. Many lawmakers, including some Republicans, think Pulte is a disastrous choice for the job, probably about as bad as I'd be at performing surgery. Like Pulte, I'd be confident and enthusiastic and extremely dangerous. So Democrats and Republicans struck a deal. If Republicans help to push through Jay Clayton's nomination as DNI, Democrats would support the renewal of something known as Section 702 of FISA, which is a controversial spy power that allows warrantless surveillance of Americans. It's a topic for another day, but that's what the deal was. At the end of the day, this is about leverage. Trump thinks that Republicans, quote, fell into a trap by agreeing to that deal with Democrats, so he's trying to derail that deal, and at the same time, he's exploiting this whole episode to secure some wins. He says that Jay Clayton's nomination, again, just it's hard to keep up with this. Jay Clayton is his own nominee to serve in his cabinet. He says the Clayton nomination can go forward, but only if two specific and entirely unrelated things happen. One, the Senate must first confirm his top choice to replace Clayton in the Southern District of New York, this guy named James McDonald, who is, surprise, surprise, another one of Trump's own personal lawyers and is likely to run into some trouble getting confirmed. And number two, Trump will only sign the FISA renewal, which he actually wants to pass, if it's attached to the so-called Save America Act, which is Trump's favored voter suppression bill. The SAVE Act is so extreme that it has very little chance of passing in the Senate. So this is Trump's last gasp to attempt to revive it before the midterms. But delaying Clayton's confirmation is going to have a third effect as well. Until someone gets confirmed for the DNI role, the inexperienced and unqualified Trump loyalist Bill Pulte will lead this country's national intelligence operation. Here to discuss it all is Brittany Cooper, Associate Professor of Women's and Gender Studies and Africana Studies at Rutgers University. She's the author of Eloquent Rage, A Black Feminist Discovers Her Superpower. Also joining us is Aaron Parnas. He's a journalist, a lawyer, a political strategist, and most importantly, a reporter with bragging rights of more than 8 million followers across all social media platforms, including 5 million on TikTok. I just checked, by the way. I have 490 followers on TikTok. Aaron is the founder of the Parnas Perspective Substack. Thank you to both of you, friends, for being on with us in this, our first week. Professor Cooper, let me start with you. This is all Trump playing politics with stuff that's really important. Yeah. No disrespect to other cabinet secretaries, but it's very important in this world that we have a qualified Department of, the National Intelligence person. Yeah. And everything's just a political game to him.
Absolutely. I mean, look, P.T. Barnum is in the American tradition, and so Trump sees himself as the ringmaster. He also used the word intrigue when he posted on Truth Social about this. He said, for a little intrigue. And that tells you exactly what he's trying to do. He thinks that this is only about showmanship. This is a guy who has lost a war. Yes. We all know that he lost it. But I also think that he is doing a bunch of attention-seeking things because this is Obama's big week for the reveal of his library, right? So given the fact that he's lost this war, given the fact that the nemesis in his head is having his own victory lap and is reminding us of a different kind of America, he is sort of instituting maximum chaos again and again and again. I think the thing that we should be concerned about is what does it mean that we're being governed by a leader that really does not care either about intelligence or about safety, and in fact thinks that that structurally inducing unintelligence is the way to govern, because putting Pulte in that position is the opposite of an intelligent or smart way to govern or to keep Americans safe.
And we have real threats. Like, we actually have to do this. Aaron, what are you thinking about this? Because I think this is true. A, this is just a lot of chaos. B, Donald Trump signed a deal today that sounds very much like he lost his war against Iran. Iran's stronger tonight than it was at the beginning of this war. He's just a general mess. But what do you make of this?
Yeah, I mean, I actually think he's going to throw J.D. Vance under the bus with the whole Iran Memorandum of Understanding. When it flops, I think it's all going to be Vance's fault at the end of the day.
He hinted at that today. He said, if it doesn't work out, I'm going to blame J.D. Vance. He actually said that out loud.
Exactly. I think this is Vance is going to be the fall guy. But I will say on the Pulte front, I think Trump is intentionally wanting all this chaos to keep Pulte in between now and November. I think he knows he can slap that interim tag on Pulte for 180 days. That'll last through November's midterm elections. He wants Pulte to go in, run roughshod in the intelligence community. He wants Pulte to go find evidence that Venezuela spied on the 2024 election and try to get into these voting machines and Dominion and all that. Everything that Tulsi Gabbard was doing, except now without any congressional oversight. That's the goal here, and I think that's what Trump is doing.
Yeah, so Professor Cooper, this is interesting because Tulsi Gabbard showed up at the Fulton County election offices and well, why are you here? Yeah. Bill Pulte is an election denier, and he's an attack dog. When I say that, I mean he's the guy who took private information about people's mortgages that ended up going to the Justice Department and resulting in charges that don't seem to be able to stick to anybody.
That's right.
he's not, again, he's not only unqualified. That's the least of our problems.
That's right.
He's actually got to Aaron's point, he's got a different assignment from Trump.
Yeah. Look, I'm deeply concerned about all of the voter suppression. I mean, I am from Louisiana. This is the place that this case has sort of, been staged, but it's also historically where the Supreme Court used Louisiana to institute segregationist policies. I think we have to remember, too, there's not just a racial dimension to this. This administration is stridently anti-women, stridently anti-queer. And so the SAVE Act also has particular effects for married women. Yes. But I thought that the goal on this side was for everybody to become a trad wife. Yes. So I don't understand why now, we're seeing young women say online.
Which, by the way, if you get married and you take your husband's name, or you get divorced and you don't, and you try and vote, you could get in trouble under the SAVE Act.
That's right. And so if your documents don't match your name, then you can't vote. And this is also evidence or a reason for us to think about the fact that the things that we do, for instance, to undocumented people, and the things that we do around weaponizing access to your documents can affect citizens too. Yes. Because they have tested this out on the most vulnerable. But really what they want is a world where men make all of the decisions, where particularly moneyed men, white men, straight men make the decisions. And so they are systematically moving in ways that make that a reality.
Aaron, we see this in polls. We see it in turnout in primaries. We see it in shifts in demographics. People are catching on to this, including young people who, in some cases, voted for Donald Trump. He's not delivering on anything for them, but he's still got a base of about 30% of support.
Well, he's always going to have that base of 30% of support, but 30% of voters isn't going to win him the midterm elections. It's not going to win Republicans the White House in 2028. I think young voters especially are fed up, right? Many young voters, especially young white men who voted for Donald Trump in 2024, did so because they thought that he would actually lower costs for them. He would make it easier to buy a home. It would make it easier to get a job. It is completely unaffordable right now for a lot of folks in America. Go on Zillow. Buying a house in any major urban area, you're going to spend 7 figures. Most young people can't afford that. You go to school, you're going to be strapped with debt when you're leaving school. You go to the grocery store, you can't afford groceries. And I think young people, they were sold kind of a fake bag of goods. They weren't around in 2016. I mean, the first presidential election I remember was 2016, but most young people don't remember 2016 because they couldn't even vote. And so they didn't know what Donald Trump 1 was like, and now they're seeing Donald Trump 2, and they're realizing that, hey, this isn't what I voted for. This isn't what I wanted.
So today the stock market was way down. I'm surprised because we have apparently this deal with Iran. The reason it's down is because people are worried that interest rates are going to go up, which is kind of weird because Donald Trump has invested the last 18 months in getting rid of the Fed chair, putting in a guy he wants right out of central casting with the specific objective of lowering interest rates. And now the Fed, because of Donald Trump's economy and Donald Trump's war with Iran and Donald Trump's tariffs, might be getting ready to increase interest rates.
Listen, again, my sort of point tonight is that we should think about what's happening to the most vulnerable. We're at great danger of being in total stagflation soon. But there are segments of our economy that are already living that. Black women have been trounced out of this economy. They have the highest unemployment rate proportionally in the country, and they're dealing with these high rates of inflation. So if we look at what is happening to them and we look at the way that this administration has actively weaponize itself against black women, we should recognize that that's what they're going to do to all Americans. They're going to make it untenable. As Aaron said, it's impossible for almost any American to buy a house under these conditions. Who has 7 figures just hanging out? Nobody does, right? And so I'm happy to have a Fed that will not just fold to Donald Trump, but the problem is that he also makes the choices impossible. Increasing interest rates doesn't make the world more affordable for anybody either. Right?
Yeah, I would like them to make their decisions based on the data, but we do have and take things seriously. But this is the problem we've got. Thanks to both of you for being here, Brittany Cooper and Aaron Parnas. Look, if you're feeling nostalgic for a different era in American politics, the Obama Presidential Center and Library, as Brittany was mentioning, opens tomorrow. Alicia Menendez will be hosting her show live from Chicago for the grand opening at 12 p.m. Eastern. Then Friday on Juneteenth at 9 p.m. Eastern, Michelle Norris will host a 2-hour special on MS Now featuring exclusive interviews with First Lady Michelle Obama and the former president himself, who had some thoughts about the current struggle to redefine American patriotism. Watch this.
This idea that, on the right, and you see this in the Trump administration, this idea that any suggestion or criticism that America was anything other than perfect is unpatriotic.
Is a suggestion that you hate your country.
Is a suggestion that you hate your country. Now, the flip side is, among progressives, sometimes there is this sense of, well, the only true narrative of America is this one of oppression and exclusion. And I reject both those views. I think it's complicated. As I said, I think it's possible to celebrate the founders and appreciate what they did, as well as look objectively and critically at how their values strayed very far from what they professed. I think it's possible to say that there were populists in rural America and the South and white America that really did believe in equality and justice, for white folks, and helped to make progress in giving more people opportunity, and not ignore the fact that that was to the exclusion of others. And that's the kind of complexity that I hope people get a little bit of a sense of.
You want people to actually marinate in that when they visit your center.
And the reason is this, because I think when you understand the complexities of America and the contradictions of America, I don't think it makes you love it less. I think it makes you love it more.
And you can catch the rest of that conversation with the former President Barack Obama in the 2-hour special Hope Comes Home this Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern on MS Now. But this next on this show, the battle for the heart and soul of the Democratic Party is playing out right here in New York with a full slate of primaries. The New York primaries are on Tuesday, and they include some of the most interesting races in the entire country because they give us a glimpse into some of the serious debates and fault lines within the Democratic Party. Let's start with one district that is a pickup opportunity for the Dems, New York's 17th. It's north of New York City. It's currently represented by one of the most vulnerable House Republicans, Congressman Mike Lawler. Now, the two Democratic candidates vying to challenge him are Beth Davidson, a county legislature, and Kate Conley, an Army combat veteran and former National Security Council official. And while primary polling is a little tough to gauge, recent surveys show Conley with a slight edge. Now, the biggest intra-party fight is taking place in New York 10, which is lower Manhattan and parts of Brooklyn. That's where the incumbent Congressman Dan Goldman is facing a tough challenge from a former city comptroller, Brad Lander, who exactly 1 year ago today was arrested by ICE while protesting in support of detained immigrants at a Manhattan immigration court. Last week, Lander was found not guilty of obstruction. Both candidates are Jewish and are in the middle of a fight over U.S. military support for Israel. Goldman, who as the incumbent has the support of the Democratic Party establishment, has also been supported by AIPAC in the past, which is playing a significant role in this year's Democratic primaries. Goldman also refused to endorse Zohran Mamdani, who cross-endorsed Brad Lander in the New York mayoral race. Though polling is limited, Lander appears to have a substantial edge over Goldman. Another bitter battle is taking place in the 13th district, located in Upper Manhattan and parts of the Bronx, where the incumbent Congressman Adriano Espaillat, who is the first Dominican-American to serve in the House and the chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, also has the support of much of the party establishment and AIPAC. But like Goldman in New York 10, he does not have the support of New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani. The mayor is backing his challenger, the Democratic Socialist Diaraliza Avila Chevalier, who has a long history of criticizing establishment Democrats, particularly on social media. Espaillat has highlighted a number of Avila Chevalier's provocative posts, which have since been deleted, but the race illustrates a generational struggle going on within the Democratic Party. Outside groups are spending millions to support both candidates, and polling shows the race tightening. Espaillat is holding a narrow lead at the moment. There's a far, far more crowded field, but a far less raucous fight in New York 12, which is located in central Manhattan, to succeed the retiring long-term Congressman Jerry Nadler. This race features a few marquee names, including the anti-Trump lawyer and former Republican George Conway and the Kennedy family scion Jack Schlossberg, grandson of the 35th president. While those are the two biggest names, Two others appear to be leading in the polls, the state assemblyman Alex Boris and Micah Lasher. There are four other candidates, by the way, bringing the total field of Democrats to 8. Support for Israel is also a major issue in this campaign. We're going to have exhaustive coverage of all 5 of these races and a few more on Tuesday night, so please stay tuned. Coming up, in the new dividing line of the Democratic Party, it might be fighters versus folders. Brad Lander has come by the fighter designation honestly. He's been handcuffed, arrested, and hauled into court for standing up to Trump's brutal ICE crackdown. He joins me next to talk about his work in immigration court and his campaign for Congress.